So we've gotten a lot of advanced questions. There's been a lot of interest in these sessions. And I'm going to have our three panelists here, Sebastian Green-Martinez, Christina Kopiti, and Milan Lipovsky, introduce themselves briefly, and then I will start in posing some of the questions that you've asked. If there's time at the end, you can also pose additional questions in the chat if we get a chance to get to those. Okay, we got one introductory question, which I think I'll actually start answering myself, and then I'll turn to the coaches to do their introductions. Could you please share the organizational plan for the training so we can avoid missing deadlines or facing confusion in the preparation framework for the competition? So if I didn't misunderstand the question here, some of this is, I guess, just about the schedule of the competition and preparing for it. So first of all, I'd recommend that you all check the ILSA website regularly, and we have the schedule posted there, including the deadlines for registration, for getting your team roster submitted, and payment, and check also with the schedule for the national rounds, and the links to contact your national administrator if you have one are available also on ILSA's website. And also check if you are in a country that has a rule supplement, please also make sure that you look at the rule supplement, as that does modify some of the general ILSA rules. And of course, the 2026 official ILSA rules are also available on our website. Okay, so if I could have the three coaches now just give a brief introduction about yourselves, and then we'll start on the questions. And I'm just going to go in order of how you appear on my screen. So Sebastian, if you'd like to start.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Roxana. My name is Sebastian Green Martinez. I have been involved in with the Jessup since the year before I did it in 2012. I was a bailiff of the Argentine national rounds before that, and after that, I just kept involved with different teams that kept coming throughout the years. And after 3 years, I did coach for the very first time, meaning that I was in charge of a team, right? And then I started coaching universities here in Spain after moving to Europe from Argentina. I started coaching again here. This is my second year coaching here in Spain, different university this time. And what else can I tell you about myself? I'm an Argentine lawyer, graduated from the University of Buenos Aires. I'm focused on public international law, and I've been working before investment tribunals for the past 13 years. And at the same time, I've been teaching public international law and international arbitration here and there.
Great, thank you. Christina, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Kopiti. I am a Colombian attorney. I've been involved with the Jessup for 16 years now, I think, if my math serves correctly, 16 years. Been coaching for 14 of those 16 years. I've also done pretty much everything you can do with the Jessup. I've coached, I've judged nationals, internationals. I competed. I've been national administrator in Colombia a couple times. I work as in-house counsel at a film distribution company, so not a lot of links to international law there, but I do want to add on to something Roxana was saying earlier. This is my personal pain every year. For payment, make sure to check with your school requirements for doing international bank transfers, because there are some schools that have limitations on international bank transfers or that may have certain specific requirements. So make sure you check with your school every requirement you need for bank transfers and any other detail you might need for registration specifically, because as I said, this is my personal pain every single year. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you, Christina. And Milan.
Thanks, Roxana. Hi, everybody. I am, as it was stated, Milan Lipovsky. I'm from the Czech Republic. When it comes to Jessup, I've been involved with it for, I always say, longer than I'm willing to admit. So I've been a participant myself in 2006 and 7, and I coached for probably 10 or 12 years till this year when I have decided to change the experience and hopefully become a judge. So I haven't gone through all the roles, but I've gone through many of them. I am right now lecturer and researcher at the Charles University Faculty of Law. I work with students in other ways than in moot courts only, but this is particularly an issue that I'm fond of, though I cannot do it for time constraints anymore. When Christina mentioned an every year recurrent pain she had, I can't stop myself from saying that I have a every year recurrent pain too with Jessup. That is not, however, related to timetable. That's actually hotel payment. It's similar issue. Make sure to know how long it takes to make bank transfers if your university requires you to do it that way. And also, if you won't do it via bank transfer, make sure to have a credit card because US hotels do not usually accept debit cards, and that's a big pain for Europeans who usually use debit cards. And one preliminary remark I would like to make also at the beginning. Thanks, Roxana, for sending the questions. My answers are necessarily going to be limited to my own experience and something that I have talked with others too. And as the preliminary remark, I'd like to say that there is no one magical uniform advice or a series of advice that would work. In the end, it always depends on the way you cooperate with the team and what works. And to be honest, luck is always a very important issue too. So the advice I'm going to be sharing is the best practice that I know of, with kind of remark that does not necessarily mean that it's going to suit in every possible scenario. So that's it from me at the beginning.
Thank you very much. And I think that also highlights nicely the reason we're doing multiple of these forums. We're really bringing in a very diverse group of coaches. So there's a new group each time from different regions, different countries, and they've all given different perspectives on similar questions. And we all are recording all the sessions. So if you're interested in any of the previous recordings, please drop me an email, and I'm happy to send you a recording of the previous sessions. And I think you'll see very much along the lines of what Milan said, that everybody's experience is different, and there are multiple approaches which can be successful. Okay, so jumping in now to the questions. Question number 1 is, would you consider best practices in selecting team members and structuring a team, particularly if you have 5 team members? Anybody like to go first on that one?
I don't impose, but I can start if it's okay, if Sebastian and Christina are okay with that. I made some notes to the answers, so I'm going to be looking sideways a bit too. Of course, I'm open to answering further questions too. That's one of the, I'd call it a mystery thing when it comes to the best practices. I'm going to share the way I do it, or did it, because that along the years turned out to be the way I was happy with the most. I usually, when Michael or whoever is at that year the head of the ILSA announces the general 4 topics that are going to be the issues for the next year, that's all we know until September, right? So, and very often it's a bit confusing because you imagine something under the topic, which in the end, when the statement of agreed facts or compromise turns out, it turns out to be something different than you imagined. So you basically are limited to a certain amount of information, which one is quite clear and the other is not that clear. The amount of information you are clear with is that always there's going to be an issue with sources of international law, with responsibility, with the procedural rules in front of the ICJ. So something you can work with the students to prepare on. And then you have the 4 issues which you may think what it's going to be about, and you can go through it with them too. So the way I do it between, let's say, May and September is that I open the selection procedure. I let every student who's interested to apply. I have special course for it at the Charles University, and throughout summer, which by the way is a selection procedure all by itself, that throughout the summer, the students actually have like once per 2 weeks, sometimes one per week, a preparation which is always focused at the either the general topic that's surely going to be in an issue in the next year, like I said, sources, responsibility, procedural rules, and also what I think might be. Of course, it might turn out to be a bit different, but we do it this way, kind of a course throughout summer. Every year it's a bit different number of people who apply, and from them it kind of narrows down because some people simply do not work throughout the whole summer, so that's a selection of its own. And those who stay and are capable of staying for the whole summer there, then I make a selection procedure based on a moot court on some chosen topic or made up fictitious scenario before the statement of agreed facts is released. And by that, I choose the 5 people in question. And obviously, then we go with preparation of memos, and we'll get to it in the other questions. So that's kind of my way how to select the applicants, by summer work, which narrows them itself, and then by a moot court based on some fictitious scenario where they have to perform orally and a little bit in a written form too. So that's kind of the basic, I would say, to the selection of the applicants before going to the preparation itself.
So I would agree with Milan on most. Here's something I do differently, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us have that same problem in terms of language barriers. So I try to focus a lot on whether the applicants have initially a strong basis in the English language that I can work with sort of to perfect in the short time frame we have to coach the students, because a lot of students do have the interest, but might have limited English language skills, which would ultimately be problematic if or during competition. So I do like to sort of focus a little bit on whether there are sufficient bases in the English language for us to proceed with that particular applicant. And I think also I personally do not like 5-team-member teams. I like 4-team-member teams, even less. And the only reason I don't necessarily like 5-team-member teams is the expectation of participating as a speaker. My school does not allow for repeat students. So students that in a 5-team-member team, you cannot have all 5 being oralists. And they do tend to have the expectation to be oralists. So depending on how your school handles the possibility of repeating, that is definitely something that you might want to keep in mind when selecting a team member or determining the number of team members that you're going to want to have.
Okay, so that was very interesting, Christina. You made me think with that point about 5 members. But going to the question, I like to say that I'll try not to repeat what has already been said, but during the selection procedure that I carry out which starts in June. What we do is a very, very similar thing to the real thing. And I mean, they have to file, the candidates have to file an applicant and respondent memorial and on 2 claims of a real Jessup case with the names and details modified just in case, but they will always find a way to reach to find all the Baxter awards and things like that. So that's not to worry, because you realize that very, very quickly when you receive a Baxter submission, and between all of the other candidates. And 2 weeks after that, they have 1 month to do that. 2 weeks after that, ideally, we have the oral round, and they have to choose 1 role. and they have to plead both claims that they addressed in their submissions. And with time, what we decided was best was to add a third step of the procedure of the selection process, which is an interview to know the candidates. At the beginning, we did not do that, and it proved to be a mistake. You want to know who you are selecting. I think that's a good practice that I could recommend. Sometimes you have a great writer for the memorials and an excellent oralist, and you get blinded and you go, okay, this guy is in, and then you know him and or her, and there are schedule problems, or he has a history with another person. I mean, problems will arise, and with five law students that gather so much and talk and discuss about one topic so much. So it's a good advice to try to stay one step ahead. So try to know them, try to know if they know each other. I mean, they know they are being candidates for the team, but it is always good to have that kind of knowledge of the candidates beforehand.
Great. Okay, so next, how regular should a full team meeting be, and what should each team meeting look like in terms of the agenda? Anyone want to start with that one?
I can start with that one. And the question is, how often should meetings be?
How regular, yes, how often should full team meetings be? And again, acknowledging, I think that there are going to be a lot of different approaches to this, but you can all give your own perspectives on it.
Absolutely, yes. Actually, I'm sure that Cristina and Milan and myself are going to disagree on this one, because I never met a Jessup coach with the same method or the same number of meetings. So what we try to do is to I'll pick up from the previous question, and then I'll move to this one very briefly. The thing is that I think it's good advice to make sure that the candidates and the team members have a solid knowledge of at least two things, which is sources of public international law and ICJ. So it's good advice to provide them beforehand that kind of information. You do not need to do a great deal of research to do that. I mean, if you have the chapter of Shaw's or Brownlee's on sources, that would be amazing for them to start. And another thing that usually takes time during the meetings is that you might select someone who, for one reason or the other, does not know how to read a judgment, and gets confused with what is case law and what is the position of the court and what is the description of the facts. So it's also a good advice in my mind that one of the first meetings should cover sources, should cover how to read the judgment, how to read an award, and things like that. And how regularly should the team meet? Well, the coach should be the one being especially conscious about energy and how limited it is. Because the team members will be, most of the times, will be very excited about it, and they will say yes to everything, or if you're lucky. But that's tricky, because you don't want them to burn out by December. So I think that the best idea is to have, I don't know, maybe 2 meetings with them at the beginning, maybe 3 if they are too green, and if they need an extra hand. And that is without prejudice of them meeting by themselves. I mean, I think it's important for the team members to gather themselves and find out what the challenges and find out new angles to the challenges of the case. And so in short, it depends on how you feel they are doing and how well yes, how well they are doing on foundations of public international law and the reading of the case, of course.
Surprisingly enough, Sebastian, we're not that far off in terms of approach. So I think, like Milan said in the beginning, each coach will have to develop their own style and figure out what works for them and what works for each group of students each year, because that's also something that you need to keep in mind. And it's that every year your team's going to change. Every year's team has a different personality. And so part of our job as coaches is to adapt to each team's personality. So what I usually like to do is I do all the prep for general international law before the case comes out. Sort of the beginning of the semester where we still don't have a case, but we're already meeting in class in a defined schedule in the classroom. Once the case comes out, I do maybe 3 or 4 full team meetings to read the case, understand the case, become familiar with the case, identify legal issues that need to be researched, and then I give them sort of a less intense time frame of about a month with no scheduled meetings so that they can do research as a team. I let them have their own space to do research and sort of to start structuring how they see the arguments going. Then when drafting memorials, we'll meet once a week maybe, sort of to go over where they are in terms of drafting. That's for this part of the year. Then once memorials are submitted, they have no rest. I will do possibly daily meetings, although those will not be full team member meetings. I might do one student each day to start or to practice mooting, because I think for the oral rounds, practice makes perfect. So I do a lot more intense full team meetings and during oral round preparations than I do with memorials. I think for memorials, it's best, and in my experience, I found that it's best to sort of let them do their thing in terms of research. It empowers them more and makes them closer to the case than having you sort of constantly on them.
Okay, if I can take over from now, I would actually structure the question into different phases because it asks about the regularity, and I would say that it's different based on the stage and also different based on when the semester start at each university. Because I just realized that the schedule we discussed in the previous question depends very much on when the semesters start and end at different universities, and in this way, for at least my team and Central European teams, sometimes like Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, it's not exactly beneficial because the most intensive preparation time, which might be in August and beginning of September, is exactly vacations, which might not be the same case in other universities. But anyway, I'm going to divide it by time and by reason or purpose. So in the preparation phase, like I said, I do not demand them to meet every day or every week. I usually meet with them once per 2 weeks because usually the amount of like general issues I want to discuss with them are the 4 issues stated by Michael, and like 4 issues of general international law, which like we talked about, it needs to be discussed and get repeated every year, and the students simply need to be acquainted with them as much as possible because they will always appear in questions. So in the preparation time, once per 2 weeks, because we start in May and it ends in September, that's possible. Then when it comes to the hot phase of memorials, I mean, before the memos are submitted, we meet every week. It's not to, work at the sessions together. They should do the work during the week, but it's to discuss what they have already done. And so, let's say, to brainstorm. Obviously, I'm not the one to do the brainstorming for them. I'm the channeler, let's say. And also it works the other way around. It works for me because I can control that they do some work. So I usually call this the Bismarckian sugar and whip. The sugar is that they will participate in the competition and go to DC possibly. The whip is, and that needs to be stated, if you do not work, I am ready to tell you that the team is done. And that needs to be checked. Obviously, that's my role as the coach. So for me, it's once a week, the whole team, for the brainstorming reasons till the memos are submitted. Then obviously they need some time for exams, depending on how your university handles that. And then when it comes to the hot phase of the oral rounds preparations, sometimes even twice a week. To prepare, to give them questions, to really get used to the oral presentations as much as possible. And we'll get to it in another question too. So that's the preparation and work, I'd say. And then I think that's something that is really important and that will probably be repeated in answers to other questions, is that for them to reach any kind of success, there is one thing that I would say that it's absolutely necessary. And that is that they really work as a team, not as 5 or 4 individual members who do not cooperate. And what really helps, and I found, obviously each team is different, each approach is different, but I found out that what really works is that they meet outside of the official sessions or official meetings, that they become friends. Because not only it helps them to cooperate, it also creates certain, let's say, bonds or a feeling of responsibility, because then they feel, if I mess up, it's not just going to be to mess up for me, I'm going to mess it up for the others too. So that's another sort of meetings. Obviously, in these meetings, they're going to discuss Jessup too, but not only. So go to a pub, go to hiking together, meet even family members, because they're going to spend 1 year telling their families, no, I can't meet you because I have a meeting for Jessup. So it's good to meet for another purpose than Jessup only. And that, how often they do that, that really is upon them. So I would talk, that's what I would say to the regularity itself.
Great, I think that's all been very helpful. So next, what should the initial steps be following the release of the problem? And how do you set draft deadlines? And what should be the purpose of, or the goal of each successive draft of the memorials?
Yeah, I think I can take this one first. And again, this is a bit from my perspective and what's worked for me as a coach. What I usually do is we'll do reading the compromise together or the case together as a team several times. Identifying legal issues. Once those legal issues are identified, I highly encourage them to read the case over and discuss amongst themselves possible arguments that they might want to. Sorry, my brain forgot how to speak English for a second. Focus the arguments that they want to bring forward. So how to sort of structure that. I think early research is challenging. And that's, I think, where a lot of our expertise in research might come in handy. I like to give them sort of general pointers as to where to look and where I think they should be looking, and let them do the research on their own. I think a lot of coaches tend to feel a little bit guilty about letting them go off on their own, I personally like letting them sort of figure it out for themselves, giving them general guidelines on how and where to do the research. But I do encourage them to do the research on their own a lot and give them enough time and space to do that. I think it gives them ownership, gives the students ownership over their arguments and trying to figure out where they're going. I think that's, to me, it's very important for the students to take ownership of their arguments and to take ownership of their case. I don't think that there's necessarily a one way to do this. I think each coach, and this is one of those points where each coach and each team might have different approaches.
Okay, Sebastian, go ahead. I'll
Or you go. It's the same.
Okay. I would only add one more thing. Thanks. Because the question is about first 7 to 10 days. So basically, if like Michael said, if something's released today, in the next week. At that time, I always want to have the team already selected. So in the first 7 days, what I do is that I tell them, read the statement of agreed facts / compromise, not once, not twice. Keep reading it all the time, every time that you have, because I want you to know it to every little detail, and make the team together 3 things. That's a map, then a list of dates and events, and also the list of names, places, whatever is important, organizations' names and stuff like that, so that they have it ready for the next research. And the first week really is just about detailed reading of the statement of agreed facts and basically remembering every possible detail that is in it. Of course, it's not going to work perfectly in the first week because they still don't know who's going to be applicant, who's going to be respondent, who's going to be pleading A and B, and who C and D. But it also works for them to select what they would like to plead. So the first week really is about as detailed reading of the statement of agreed facts as possible, and basically knowing it like a old style teaching methods where you just remember it as much as you can, but not to be able to repeat it without thinking. But if I ask them, so what happened on, I don't know, 5th September 2021, and is mentioned in the statement of agreed facts, they need to be able to tell me. So that's what I would add to what Christina stated. But that's limited to the first week.
I was going to go in a very similar direction, so just not to be redundant, I think I can skip this one.
Okay. So we got another question about memorials. I will just mention here that the purpose of this is not to be substantive. This is really about the coaching. But I did get a question about sources and authorities, and what your tips on managing those are, and how best to filter what is useful versus unnecessary, and whether there are any tips for managing this in preparation. So again, I would just say that this is not meant to be for you to give substantive answers, but perhaps on how you give guidance to the team members when they're researching their memorials. And I'm just also putting in the chat here the official rule regarding assistance from team advisors and the scope of that as a reminder.
Thank you, Roxana, for saying that, because that was the beginning of my answer to this question too, that I would refrain from giving a detailed tips on, in this case, it was the intervention applications matter, right? But I was still gonna give a kind of an answer for that, and that is when it comes to management of sources for the students. That's obviously an important thing for them to know how to look for sources. And I forgot to say that that's one of the things that I teach the students in the preparatory course too, to know about databases like Hein Online or Cambridge Core, because sometimes they don't know about that. They usually should, based on their studies of public international law general course, but even if they don't, or even if they do, they don't always know every possible details. So one thing that, in addition to that, I really want to praise Ilsa for doing, because my students have been very happy with that, is to allowing the access to use Mundi. I don't know if it's going to be this year too, but if so, then make sure that your students use it. It's very good, and it helps them in finding out the relevant sources too. And one more general comment. Obviously, it's not a good idea for students when they're very excited and suddenly when they know the compromise and what the prayer for relief is, they start looking for or tend to start looking for the specific answers to the question, which they will never find because it's always balanced, right? So it's not that easy. So the approach is start from the beginning. I think Sebastian mentioned that. Just tell them to look at, start with chapters from Brownlee or from Shaw or from Klabers or whoever, and go from the general to the more specific, because otherwise they will go to the specific and get lost in the basics that they need to know. So that would be my advice to the management of sources and how to work with them as well.
But before the other two of you jump in on this question, I just want to address the Use Mundi point that Milan raised. So you will have access to that again. Just when you register, make sure that there's a box you need to tick to give Use Mundi access to the team members' email addresses. And from my understanding, access will start for people who have given that permission on October the 1st. And then Sebastian and Christina, please.
I don't know, Christina, I can go if you want. I would add, I agree with when Milan said that that's good advice, definitely. And there is this thing, Christina said before too that she promotes them to own their own arguments and to have a feeling of owning them, and that could be tricky when the deadline comes closer. I mean, I have seen a number of team members fighting over whether this argument should stay or should go. And that's a problem, especially in January. Right after the holidays, everybody's tired, and this feeling and this relevance to each argument developed by the team, of course, but some arguments have been having the result of maybe one team member or two. That's how team works. I mean, you distribute the team works it out itself. They distribute the claims, and they go ahead. But you have to be careful not to be able to say no, this is leaving. I mean, this is not staying, and to have tact, not to just. I mean, it's important to listen to the team members and to the and to the yes, to the team members, because otherwise they could get frustrated. And if they feel that they are not being heard, their ideas are being removed and things like that, well, that could be a source of frustration. So going back to the question, to me, it is paramount, as Milan said, that at the beginning they have to have guidance on the basics of public international law, but also on how to do research. With Shaw, you can do a great deal of arguments just by following the footnotes and going to the judgment, and then studying the judgment top to bottom, and then following another footnote. And you don't need much to do that. But in 2025, 2026, yeah, I agree. It's critical. You can feel the difference when you have team members that actually have research engines available and those who don't. And those who have them available but don't know how to use them. That solves the problem. So it's important for the coach to be aware of that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with a lot of what Miran and Sebastian have said. I would add one thing, and it is one of our main responsibilities during, I think, the first couple of weeks and the first sort of foray into the research of the case is to help the students identify when a source is authoritative and when it's not. And this comes from knowledge of how the sources work. So I think a lot of the work that needs to be done is to help the students understand the sources of international law, how they work, because we're in the era of information. If you put into Google, what are general principles of international law, you will get a lot of information from random blog posts written by first-year college students to very deep articles on the legal nature of general principles. So I think part of our role is to help the students navigate which of those sources are useful and which are not, in terms of which are authoritative and which are not. That said, and I don't want to say this because this session is being recorded, but I actually tend to encourage my students to Google. Just start with Google. Not because it's an authoritative source, but because it's your first foray into what type of information is out there. You get a wide range of information, both basic and not so basic, as to what is out there in terms of information and available information. I do encourage them to start with Google. It's always, I think, a good place to start to sort of land where you need to be.
Okay, thank you all for that answer. Next question is, how do you keep track of the team's progress without putting too much pressure on them? And how do you avoid leading to burnout?
So I do two things. Number one, to keep track of them, I do, depending, like I said earlier, depending on what stage of the competition we're in, we'll do meetings of the entire group, but we also have WhatsApp chat. I encourage the students to have one WhatsApp chat with me and one without me. The one with me is, I just ask them, how are you doing? Anybody need anything? And I think that's a good way to sort of avoid them feeling like you're being too pushy. And it's just asking them if there's anything that you can do, if they have any questions, if they're doing okay, if they need any assistance in a specific case, just not necessarily always being, are you ready? Are the memorials ready? Is the first draft ready? And number two, to avoid burnout, I like to do activities, and I have to admit this, I stole from a coach who does one of the schools in Denver. She came up with a game show type competition that we do, and she gave me the idea and I copied it off her. We do a game show type competition, and I try to schedule them when things are getting a little bit tiresome and when they're already starting to feel the heat from either approaching deadlines or simply just 5 weeks of constant studying and research. Then we'll do a game show. We'll do a international law competition but doing activities like that, which still sort of help them do the work that they need to do, but in a less formal and strict manner, is at times helpful to encourage team bonding and to sort of alleviate burnout.
I have to say that I agree thoroughly. To me, it's critical to create a relationship with the coach, team member. You need to know them. You need to know where they are when they are doing the Jessup. It's curious because by doing that, the coach learns a lot about these people, and these people for some reason, and I think it's what's so great about the Jessup. They will remain for one reason or the other. They will reappear in your life later, or they will continue being friends. And if you're lucky enough, the coach will be part of that amazing circle. But sometimes they are going through stuff at home. Sometimes they work. That's very common in certain universities. You have a student, but he's or she is also a paralegal somewhere and works 8 hours a day besides going to the university and doing the Jessup. So it is important for you to know where they are, where they are standing, and act in consequence. I mean, that's how you will find out what the limit is and what each team member can give and what they cannot give to this team in particular. And promoting friendship, I think, is also, if you're lucky, you have to do nothing in that field. If you're lucky, they will become friends because they all love international law and they all love talking about it and gathering to talk about it. If you're lucky, that part of the job is done. But in my experience, there is always, for some reason, 4-1 dynamic. There is one guy or girl who will not, for some reason, fit with the rest. And that could be challenging you when that happens, if that happens, when you have a minority team member. I think that the most important thing is, okay, you have to accept that they are not becoming friends, and you have to do what's best for the team. You have in those cases, what I suggest is not promoting friendship, but yes, promoting active listening to that person. Sometimes misunderstandings are just a product of being tired, doing a lot of things at home and whatnot. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I just wanted to add that. And when it comes to avoiding burnout, well, I don't know if I'm the best to ask about this. I think that you do most of the damage control or burnout control by being there and talking to them and listening and giving them advice, and also cutting them some slack when they need it. But I usually promote a 2 weeks camp. The days before, it's not a real camp, it's in a university or in an office, that we meet every day before filing the submissions. In January, right after New Year's, everybody is summoned to work thoroughly on the submissions together and discuss them in the same office. I think that's good because that concentrates and elevates the work in a way that in the previous weeks you don't see that much.
I would only add few, let's say, boring things, because when it comes to the question is about schedule and burnout. So I would say that at the very beginning, I would tell the student of the real work, not the preparation. I would discuss with them what they expect, the schedule, obviously, in addition to what the official schedule of Jessup says. So how to fit in those dates. And obviously, the big deadlines are submission of the memorials and the oral rounds, national and/or international. So basically, between September and the submission of the memos, we make discussion about what they expect, and I tell them what I do expect. And we always make a, let's say, time schedule that is to ideally fulfilled. It's never fulfilled. It always gets broken. The ideal is to finish the memos quicker than as quick as we can, which sounds weird. That sounds like we can just throw it away, write something. I do not mean it like that. I mean that we want to have more time on oral preparations. So we try to be quicker with the memos than half of January, which never works, honestly. But it's good for them to know what the ideal framework is, whatever your ideal framework is in the end, as I say, in addition to what the official Jessup schedule is. When it comes to control how they work and avoiding burnout, well, Jessup is fun, but it's fun gained by hard work. So they need to be aware of that at the very beginning. And this may sound too strict, but I think that if they reach burnout, it might be because they are not working in a way that they should be working to prepare for the Jessup. Because if it is done correctly, like all of us actually basically said, if they start with basic things and go to the more specific, they should avoid the burnout. Because first of all, it'll be exciting. And secondly, they will be progressively getting to the more successive things or detailed things. They might get burned out if they do not have the basics and do not understand the specifics later, which can be avoided by doing the preparation well. I know it sounds very easy. It's not that easy as I'm saying it. It's just a general advice. And by the way, the things that have been stated before, the WhatsApp group is a great idea. The who gets wrong answer drinks, that made me laugh because that's a good one. We also went to pub and drank together. We just didn't do this game. It might be a good idea too. And one thing that is specific for certain languages though, and I'm going to tell you what I do, but it might not be your way. So just think about it. In some languages, it's not so in English, but in some languages, like, for example, German or Czech too, you differentiate in the way of addressing people. In German, it's duzen and siezen, meaning you address them informally or formally. So to your family member, you say you very informally. If it's your professor, you say it in a formalistic way, like calling someone by name or by title. I tend to do it the informal way with the students, because then I have a feeling that they know they can tell me more than if they every time call me doctor or professor. It's however a double-headed axe. If you do not work with them in a strict way, they might then take you too easily. So it works well because they take you as a friend, but they also need to be aware that this friend can turn out to be unfriendly if they do not work properly. So I would limit this question or answer to this.
Great. Okay, we have two last questions, if we can fit them both in here. The next one is, what methods or activities do you use to prepare the students for the oral rounds?
If I can start. I have a bit of an experience as a half amateur actor, and what turned very good for me is especially, as Christina mentioned it, not just language skills, but also oral presentation skills are extremely important, especially for non-native English speakers. And what plays a huge role, not just in a mood, but also in a real courtroom, is that the judges and counterparty get what you're saying. And because of the acting background, I tend to try to prepare students in oral exercises. Look for, in English language, for the tongue twisters. That's one thing I would add in addition to the obvious things you need to do to prepare orally. Also, really make sure that they exercise their mouth muscles to be heard properly, because that plays a huge role. I actually got lost in my own answer. Yeah, for the oral rounds, exactly. Yeah, so that's one thing. The other that I would recommend is when we prepared for the oral rounds, try to make the place where you exercise with them to look and be laid out as much as the courtrooms or simulated courtrooms that the competition is going to take place, for them to get acquainted with it, to stand, to be dressed as in the courtroom, to have a pedestal that they can have stuff at as if in the real Jessup courtrooms, really to get used to everything that is going to be in the courtroom like. Also to have ideally 3 panelists to give you questions, because that way they won't be surprised by these things that look like details, but they're not details. They play a significant role. If you need to focus on speaking with the judge or giving proper answers, and suddenly you feel that you're standing in the wrong position because you're not used to standing or having papers in front of you, etc., etc., it will play a really bad role for you. So make sure that you rehearse in circumstances that are as close to the real thing as possible. So I would say these two things, to the obvious things you need to prepare for the oral rounds, of course.
So fully agree. One thing I like to do, and this is because students tend to get very attached to their scripts. So you need to figure a way to get them off script. So I like to do improvisation exercises. So I'll give them very random, not necessarily legal topics, and give them 30 seconds to come up with a 3-minute speech on last year. There was one about whether or not the British monarchy should remain. And they had 30 seconds, and we're in Colombia, so it's not something we're constantly talking about or even very much aware of. And they had 30 seconds to give me a 3-minute speech on whether the British monarchy should or should not remain. These are things that sort of help them understand, and again, with the language skills, sort of to improvise in English, come up with ideas and think on their feet in English, because that is something that they're going to have to learn to do to sort of be able to go off script with the judge's questions.
I agree with everything. Just to keep it short, the first thing I do is start with a pause after the memorials submission, after the filing. I give them 4 or 5 days just to be with family and their own friends, and so avoid getting sick of this too soon. And after that, I mean, as Christina said before, when it comes to oral rounds, practice that does get you to perfection, and it doesn't have anything to do with winning, of course. But I think that preparing a calendar of meetings beforehand that suits their schedule and the coaches, of course. To do a simulation. When you're coaching non-native speakers, Milan made very good points. What I try to do with them is to work not on their English, but on their plain English. So in order to avoid complications with unnecessary complications with words that could take you somewhere that you were not fully aware of the implications of one word, things like that. We do exercises of plain English, and that works a lot. Also, when we are in the middle of the schedule, and I mean of the whole calendar, after a few simulations, I also do a lightning round, which means the goal of that lightning round is for them to realize why they are doing the Jessup. There will be times that they will ask themselves, why did I sign up for this? Why am I not enjoying life with other people? Well, I usually dedicate one meeting to learning why everybody is doing the Jessup. And my goal with that meeting is for them to conclude that they are doing the Jessup not for their university, not for their... They usually say that they do the Jessup to represent the family, to represent the country, to represent the university. And when you dig a little deeper, that's not true. That's they are doing the Jessup because they want to. And most of them because they want to win it. And they are excited about it. And I like reaching that point to gather the team just for them to realize that they are doing this for themselves and for no one else's. If you're doing it for your girlfriend, if she doesn't love you afterwards, well, she didn't before. Same with families, same with university will stay there. Your country will stay there. So forget about that. Do it for yourself. And that level of consciousness, I think, improves the experience. A lot has already been said about image advice. That's important. And protocol, of course. I think that sometimes they are not fully conscious of the implications of, for instance, appearing to court with a piercing in your nose or things like that. So you have to be a little bit detail oriented when it comes to the oral rounds. And yes, that's pretty much it.
Okay, if our panelists have time for one last question, we have the question of how do you best prepare students between national rounds, if you have them, and the international rounds?
That's the question, because depending on the date of the national rounds, you may have a lot of time to prepare, or you may have too little time to prepare. When I did the Jessup, we had exactly 1 month between the Argentine national rounds and the international rounds. And it was perfect to have 1 month to continue growing with the extra of going to DC and that enthusiasm. But I don't know if there is something else to say besides to say keep practicing. If you won your national rounds, take advantage of that of the enthusiasm that it generates in the team members, and go nuclear. I don't know, 2 rounds a week, 3 rounds a week. If the team wants more, they can have more, and they can do it. They can judge themselves. That's also something that I promote a lot. That them judging themselves, always amicably, of course, but and that's it. I don't know if there is a clear-cut answer to this one.
Agreed. It also, as Sebastian said, is going to depend on how much time you have. But I think always a good exercise between national rounds and international rounds is to do a lessons learned meeting after national rounds. I think national rounds is a great first moment into, number one, figuring out where you need to improve. Each student becomes aware of where they are themselves failing, or where they need to improve. And I think it's a good thing to sit down with the students and sort of socialize what we learned during national rounds and where we pinpoint the specific places where each oralist and where the team as a whole needs to improve. And also you get a little bit of a glimpse into where the legal questions are going. So sort of hunker down on what the different moods are looking like, what the judges are expecting for each legal problem, and sort of really go deep into those specific points. I think that's a good way to spend your time between nationals and internationals, other than doing a lot of mooting. It is important to debrief lessons learned.
I would only add a little bit, and that's that the preparation between national rounds and international rounds, or the time when usually national rounds take place and international rounds, depends on if you have national rounds. If not, make sure, try to make sure, it's obviously depending on finances too, to look for your chances to do the friendlies or participate in the friendlies, because it's a huge experience gained, either national rounds or the friendlies. Before, like it was stated, they for the first time, sometimes if they're competing for the first time, get acquainted with what it really is like to stand in front of the judges and give answers, or discuss with the judges. So the preparation between either friendlies or international rounds, I'm gonna say something controversial first and then explain it. I don't think that it differs from the preparation to the national rounds. And if you're preparing for the international rounds after the national ones, it's late. So you should be preparing for the international rounds and national rounds at the same time, because it is not necessarily different. The rules are the same, but you will get more experience, or your students will get more experience during the national rounds / friendlies, depending on where you go. So like Christina said, I would add to that, prepare in the same way, even before national rounds, and after them, add the experience, learn from the experience, learn what was wrong, or what you thought was not wrong, that sounds too harsh, what could have been improved, that's a better way, and build upon it. And one more thing that I would say, and that's extremely important, because you will always have your team members that are not the oralists at that round, you'll be having them sitting in the back. Tell them to write down every single question that was given by the judges in every round, because you will hear them again and again and again. And there are some questions to which you can pre-prepare answers. Something that if they typically give, I don't want to go into details, Roxana would stop me if I did, but this is a question which every student will have. And that is, what is the reason, or basically, it's not to go to detail, why are you quoting this source and how is it relevant? For example, if they talk about UN General Assembly, they're going to ask, is that binding? How is it relevant for us? You can always have a generic answer, and if well prepared, to answer and think about how to build upon that. So that's why always write down every single question that has been laid. And Roxana chose one of the answers that have still been sent to us. I would, if I can, answer to one of those that haven't been laid yet. And that is, what do the judges expect? I won't go into details, but please tell your students, every judge wants to hear something else. So don't be frustrated if you get contradictory feedback from different judges, because they not only want to hear something else, they also, even if they're happy, need to give you critical feedback. So you will necessarily have a contradictory feedback. And to students who don't expect it, that's frustrating. No, just build upon it. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's all the time we have now. But I would welcome any feedback from any of you about how we could improve these forums or do more to strengthen our judge training. I hope you found this helpful, but I really want to thank Sebastian, Christina, and Milan very much for their time and for all the wonderful answers they've given. And I myself, having seen 3 of these now, I think it's really interesting to see how many different approaches and perspectives there are. So I will be scheduling at least one more of these sessions, probably for the beginning of October. So stay tuned for updates about that. If you came in late and you'd like the recording to see what you missed, please send me an email and I will send it to you later. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you again to the panelists, and have a lovely, wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you.